Finally, Michael Crabtree, Director of Scientific Affairs at Bioenergy Life Sciences, is a naturopathic doctor who drives innovation in anti-aging and cellular health. First, we're going to transform from the traditional formulator into a well-rounded R&D professional who understands the full product life cycle. That's kind of the big concept. We're also going to gain practical knowledge of business considerations and learn how formulation decisions impact manufacturability, marketability, and profitability. I want to just do some general questions to kind of jump into this topic. And so I'm going to start with, beyond technical expertise, because that's usually what you think of when you think of R&D professionals, is technical expertise. But beyond that, what would you say are some of the most valuable skills to have as an R&D professional?
So I think for me, the most important thing that beyond your technical expertise is going to probably be economic literacy. I think also, if I could list three things, it would be economic literacy, which is learning to manage a project from A to B, B to C, especially depending on the size of the organization that you are in. But if you are like me, which you are situated between a group that manufactures and a group that then develops all the way to consumer brands, you need to know everything about it. And that's cost of goods manufacturing all the way through cost of goods sold and then cost to end user. These are very, very important things. Running each project like it is its own entrepreneurial project and learning how to develop basically a P&L and a balance sheet per each project as if it were your own. And if you can think about that balance sheet, think about that as an entrepreneur would think about their own project and what that would mean to someone, and then think about the end user, the person who's actually going to be plucking it off the shelf or purchasing as a part of an e-commerce, who is actually trying to solve a health problem in their life. I think it will greatly increase the qualitative nature of your work.
What do you see AI's impact on experimental design to be? That's right. It is in speeding up, the R&D pipeline in ways, like I said at the beginning, we don't fully understand yet. So, Michael, what are your thoughts?
Well, I would say that's the obvious answer. It is going to shorten the runway in every aspect of your development phase, whether you're moving from the raw materials or new things, new ideas coming out of your innovation sector and into the product development, where you're actually going to start nuts and bolts R&D and developing various kinds of vehicles and products, and then go in looking for prospective clients to potentially sell the product. Everything gets shorter when you can give that final product or the result to a client who you think would be a good fit for the product quicker. The whole thing just gets quicker. So, I think there are also very, very good uses for it on the QA and QC side. Speeding up iterations means that you can have very, very general Q&A information on a product if it's stable in a liquid format. You don't have to go and test every single potential combination of every single product in a shelf stability, but you can take that general information and you can add the specificity by running over and over, like a simulacra, running iterations of the Q&A shelf life stability. And it gives you the ability to be much more comfortable handing someone a product, even though they intend to make it their own, with adding their own innovation to it and so forth, but that it's going to be shelf stable once they actually put it on a shelf. And
that makes sense. It is speeding things up, and I know that I'm gonna put a little twist on the question now, because speed often brings risk. What are some of the risks that we can identify now as possible outcomes of speeding up everything using these large language models, these tools that are not necessarily always 100% right when they spit out results, right? So what are some of the risks of that? Anyone feel free to jump in.
I think, accuracy is one of the biggest issues, right? So what I think is necessary, and I think recursive data has been one of the biggest problems in large language models, and it's being highlighted as one of the things that's coming out as being difficult to deal with as they try to go through successive generations of large language models. But what I have found to be helpful is we have our own internal company AI, but I also use a whole suite of publicly, your pro version of ChatGPT, what have you, using them to turn whatever you're doing into basic VBL code, learning a little bit about Python, and having each one of these models constantly checking the inputs and prompts and the outputs constantly, basically forcing these 3 or 4 major models to be used to correct one another's errors is a really great way to use them, to sort of have them function in parallel.
I like to equate that of using AI to solve AI problems. So having that cross-reference, I think, is super important. That's a great point Michael made.
So let's change gears a little bit. What's the strategy to enhance greater speed and success from ideation to conceptual to R&D feasibility trial? Who would like to take that one?
AI specific?
It doesn't have to be AI specific. This is we're changing gears a little bit because I didn't want to necessarily focus on one technology because this is not an AI session. So just in general, what would you say are some of the strategies there, like the best strategies to take an idea from that ideation phase all the way through R&D trials?
I mean, I've had great success doing this by connecting with, so having coming from a clinical background, but also having prior to my clinical background, having research experience. I mean, looking at and looking for great information, boots on the ground from all of the great now cohort of physicians that are all over the world and all over the country, treating people in the trenches and learning from them using visual analog scales, using polling data, using applications like People Science, which is out there right now that is great. And building very simple documents that you can hand to people that you trust, that you know are seeing dozens of patients a day. What are they facing? What are they doing? And looking to see what the actual problems that they're facing are, and then using that information as a starting point, almost like using case reporting. It's almost to say that turning the hierarchical order of data on its head. I mean, you start with case reporting sort of being the less important, going all the way down to metadata being very important. It sort of flips that, because if you have access to all these people who are seeing individuals who are experiencing problems and there just aren't products on the market to solve those potential problems, that's an immediate thing that you can attack, and you can just start filling in the gaps.
So thinking of the next generation of food scientists, based on your experience in the field, what skills would you focus on growing now if you're trying to jump into this industry? Either the food and beverage or supplements.
Well, I mean, I'm going to probably encourage any young person that I am working on mentoring to become multilingual. I'm going to recommend that they learn how to speak a couple languages. I would also say any kind of cross-cultural experience that you can get when you're very young is really great. Okay, travel to the same trade shows that we have at SupplySide Global, but go elsewhere in the world, see what they're thinking, see what they're doing, and try to make a legitimate assessment about what kind of market that the products that are elsewhere in the world, whether you're going to South America, you're going to Asia, wherever it is, how are they developing? And that was a big part of my development 10 or 15 years ago, and it has served me very, very well. And I've kept that kind of global outlook. And then that ties back into what I mentioned before, which is economic literacy, looking quite literally at these emerging markets and how they're tying together, what's trending there, where are they in their development, because the United States is really apexed in its natural products. I mean, we're going to continue to grow, but you're seeing now other markets around the world kind of where America was maybe 15 or 20 years ago, and accelerating rapidly. And those are the most exciting places on the planet to work.
That's really interesting. I wasn't expecting to hear, learning multiple languages and experiencing other cultures, and that's so important, though. So, what would you say are some surprising things that you've learned as an R&D professional, like as you are exploring other parts of how business works? What would you say are some of the most important, ways that has shaped your approach as a formulator?
The Harvard Business Review is a great resource. I mean, if you take a look at any MBA program, I didn't go through an MBA and I'm never going to, but one of the things that I did, one very good piece of advice was don't go through an MBA, but here's a free resource for you to take a look at all of these case studies. Get yourself a really good book on accounting and learn what a balance sheet is and how to read it. These are very important things, as Michael just mentioned, as you move away from the kind of the pragmatic and into the lofty floating on a cloud in sort of in the profit margins above the, it becomes more difficult, and it actually makes the decisions that used to be really, really easy far more complicated. They're far more complicated because you understand that there's this entire spectrum of things that feed down into the basic chemistry that's going on in the lab.
So a quick follow-up question from the audience. We've talked about, aligning R&D with marketing, but how would you approach doing this with individuals who are maybe in a higher position within the organization? Do you have any tips for kind of approaching that situation? You mentioned, that sometimes the world might not be ready for a product. So what happens in that situation when there's a conflict within the organization and, you need to resolve it in a positive way.
Oh, this is where criteria and standards come in. I mean, you have to have, as a company, you've got to have a set of standards that you're going to abide by. There have to be a set of road rules that you can all apply. So that when these kinds of things do arise, everyone, no matter what level they're at in the company, has something to fall back on, because you very often will get aggressive sales and marketing executives that want to drive things forward. But the reality is that we don't have enough data, or the data is someone else's, or there are potential legal boundaries, legal obstacles in IP. There's any number of things that can pop up. But if you have a group of people from operations, all the way down to your people in the QA lab, who are just testing quality and sometimes don't want to be involved in this kind of stuff, they're kind of out of the way. But if everybody has an understanding about what kind of quality criteria that you're dealing with internally, then it gets more difficult for these kinds of hostile takeovers of the product development phase to come forward. So.
Okay, so what about when you're working with within a small team? How does R&D change? How does that process change when you're at a really small company?
I mean, in my case, I've been at a smaller company. I mean, you just have more individual face time with the people that you work with. I mean, COVID, of course, changed some of that, but the reality is that if you're in a smaller team that is without the bureaucracy, you're in contact with them all the time. And I still very much believe that the best way to exchange information is one-on-one in person. There's just things that you don't. Had a manager once who said, you don't know, if you're not in the office, how many conversations you might miss out on just stumbling into someone's office because you had an idea and you just want to chat about it, and your mentor is sitting there doing nothing, and you have the conversation, and then all of a sudden it's an hour down the line and you have a plan and comes together. So those things just organically arise all the time, especially in smaller teams, and I think that's one major difference.
So let's take a step back. What advice do you have for R&D professionals who are looking to change categories, say within the food and beverage industry? They're looking to go from, beverage to bakery, or vice versa. Do you have any insights on what they might expect?
Wherever you go and whatever you do, you're going to have to be economically literate. Just to go back to this, you're going to have to understand the business that you're moving into. I would hope that you would have the desire to understand the business that you're coming out of. So no matter where you're going, if you're planning on changing industries, finding the resources so that you can understand the capital flow from point A to C, the end user, is a really good idea.
What would you kind of wish that someone would tell you about, how you should kind of plan your career? Anyone have any insights on that?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with economic literacy, but another thing is that I wish someone would have pulled me aside and said, you're going to have an entire case full, a stable full of products that are never going to leave your mind. Okay, so you're going to have them full through the development, and they're probably not going to go anywhere. And that group is going to be much larger than the ones that actually make it onto the shelf and do some good. So, but don't worry about those. That's just what we call technical reserve.
So what areas of ingredient innovation or food tech do you see as the most transformative in the next 3 to 5 years? Anyone want to jump in and take that?
Agree. I think peptides, both oral and IV peptides, are a very key trend right now to take a look at. And I think also there are methods of increasing bioavailability and solubility of key plant bioflavones, which are extremely effective molecules. But one of the problems and drawbacks is they've always been impossible to get into beverage formations, and they're not particularly bioavailable, but they have such great effects that wouldn't it be great if we could just figure out a simple way to, let's say, enhance the solubility by 1,000x. Well, stuff like that is being developed, and I think those are two key trends.
Well, let's give our panelists a round of applause.